big thing is like really this doubt of being enough, and not like being enough for me, but like, am I giving enough emotional support? Am I giving enough quality of time with them? Like, am I giving enough for them? More like the most important thing is to trust me. I don't want them to have feelings of abandonment or that I don't love them or I don't care for their best interest. I want that trust. So I always worry that it's not enough. And I'm not talking about things. I'm not talking about like time, because I get time is important. But you know, the reality in time with your kids is it has to be quality.
Yeah.
So we think, oh, I know it's a mom that works 40 hours a week and you only see your kids in the evenings, all this stuff. Yeah, it's like you want to be with your kids, but then it's like, but if you were with your kids all the time, would it be quality time?
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading this study years ago where some company, I gotta find this research. They interviewed like 1,000 men. What was it? 1,000 men about how they felt about having a father that was out of the house, so like traveling for work, and reflected on their memories of their time with the father. And the majority of them said that they don't even remember that he was gone all the time for work, because the only time they remember was when they were together. And so these successful traveling fathers would come home, and when they're home, they're home.
Yeah.
And it might only be a couple hours a week, but the only thing they remember about those couple of hours is how amazing it was to be a dad. So when we think about, you know, being enough, it's the time thing is a lie. Yeah. But it's the quality that matters, because you reflect on any memories of a child. It wasn't like, oh, I remember my dad was with me 100 hours a week. Woohoo! We had the best time together. No, he works. My mom works. They had interest outside of their work and their family too. So yeah, I guess that's probably my biggest thing of parenting, is just the enoughness of quality time. So when my parents were young, they grew up in very like strict households. And my mom even spent a few years at a boarding school. And so, yeah, so when when my dad and my mom got married and decided they wanted to have kids, they agreed that they were not going to raise my sister and I the way they were raised. Because my mom, strict, super Catholic household, like proper table manners, all this stuff. And my father, whose father was on the road, he grew up with an alcoholic mother and a sister who has Down syndrome. And so they were like, we're not doing this with our kids. So then they taught us those beliefs. And now my husband and I are very intuitive. We read a lot. We educate ourselves about different perspectives. And now we're trying not to impose so much of these beliefs onto our kids, and hoping we're giving them enough freedom so they can explore the world from their own lens and not from ours.
Yeah. And one of the things I really value with my kids is letting them always be asking questions and answering the questions, and teaching them how to seek to find the answers that they're looking for, because I think that we are very open-minded and inquisitive as kids, and our job as parents is to give our kids the best ability to find the answers that feel right for them, you know, and still while having underlying values of how you treat people, you know, how to value humans while you're still finding your own way.
Yeah. So I went out for dinner last night with two other women that have, you know, like similar family values. And we were talking about this very sacred conversation about breastfeeding. And our kids are older. So most of the kids, I think the youngest is like 4 in all the children that are, that we're talking about, these women. And I was just, you know, shamefully saying I only breastfed my boys for 2 months because I had to go back to work. I started my company, and there was a lot of reasons that really was nobody else's business, but I felt super ashamed. And then the lady across the table was like, oh, well, I breastfed my daughter till she was 3. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive. But there was no judgment at the table. It was like totally understanding each person's position. And there wasn't like, oh, that's too long, or that wasn't long enough, or not breastfeeding long enough is the reason why your kids have all these problems, like XYZ. And it was just nice to be in this open conversation and having women like provide tips when they are called for, but also totally respecting other people's position on parenting, because really at the end of the day, if your kid is fed and loved, that is all you need for a child. And we think we come at parenting from these realistically from these indoctrinated beliefs of how we're supposed to do things. And I always say the supposed to rule book needs to be burned.
So true.
Yeah. So we had Max, and I just finished launching an agency, and we had clients all over the world. And 11 months later, we welcomed Noah. And then we got to this point where it's like, okay, this is not normal. And there's a reason why people don't do this. I get it. But we really needed to systematize our family life in order to be functioning adults and functioning employers. So we actually applied all of these systems and rules that we used in our business to our family life, which helped us understand, helped me understand the finances, helped me understand scheduling, about creating an operations manual for our family life. And what we learned is that when you're organized, they say, for every minute spent organizing is an hour saved.
Yeah.
So we set up these kind of procedures of how our family's going to operate, including a mission statement and vision and values. And we would write down where we needed the most help. And with a 11-month-old and a newborn baby, you're not getting a lot of sleep, right? It was crazy. And so we wrote down a dream list. Oh, a night nanny. We want this, a cleaning lady 2 times a week, this. And we started checking off the things we knew we could afford and started implementing them. And it was really hard for me because, going back to our conversation of, what our mothers think, or what has our parents taught us about parenting, is I grew up in a household where still it was my dad was super helpful, but it was kind of construed that the women did everything.
Sure.
And so the idea of me having somebody come in at night to help with my newborn child, it was all I could think about was what would my mother say? Oh, my mother, And so we didn't ever, I don't even know if we've told her to this date, because I just don't want to have that conversation. But, letting go of those, oh, I should be doing this, in order to someone says, would you rather have your baby sleep in a bassinet with you every day of the week and you only get 3 hours of sleep? Or what about, having 2 nights of the week where there's a bonus 8 hours of sleep? What would you choose? It's well, of course I want that extra sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was getting over that indoctrination and the shame of giving that responsibility to somebody else who we're paying, so that I could get 2 nights of sleep a week.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest lesson learned, is the creating the systems, but also the letting go, relinquishing control of those things in your life. It's crazy. We have some behavioral issues with one of my children, and potentially, we haven't got him tested yet, but potentially he could be on the spectrum, which we don't know. Maybe not. But he's a unique child. I love him. But it's definitely testing my patience and my ability now to balance the mom worry, the fact that we're homeschooling him full time and working on my business full time, and my other child being in a school. So there's just a lot going on. But the lessons in that, and I think about the times of running my business, kids are a forcing function for you to get as productive as you can in the time that you're given. And so when people say, oh, I can't run my business and have babies, I'm yes, you can. If you structure it well, you can totally do this, because kids, are human alarm clocks. So they're mostly predictable when they're going to wake up, right? So you can structure your day around that. And knowing at the end of the day, if your kids are in daycare or school, you only have these 8 hours to get your work done. The people that were single, because I know I was once there running my business, would get up whenever and they would work till whenever. You don't have that with kids, but it forces you to be super focused and constrained on the things that you actually do take on in the day. They've taught me that.